Yes, and here we are tonight for this Friday night footy and round 3 preview here on Howlin Sports. I've got Ben Murphy here. How you going, Ben?
I'm very well, thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's very good. So we're going to start off with Glenelg and Port Adelaide Magpies from the Glenelg Oval, and we'll also be bringing you live updates from the game tonight. Bit of a big game. Glenelg after losing to South Adelaide in round 1, and Port Adelaide after a win against absolutely insipid Adelaide Crows SANFL team last week. So having a look at this, we've got a bit of an exciting name coming in here. Wanganeen, but is coming in for the wrong team. Derek Wanganeen in for Glenelg. Martini, there's an Ian Miller as well. We've got another Miller running around.
Yeah.
And someone called Neil Vivi.
Is Wanganeen related?
I assume that he's kind of related. I don't know if they're directly related, but...
Nice.
And Bailey and McGinty out for Glenelg. In for the Port Adelaide Magpies, Jack Chengrove, Sam Davidson and Simon Wong have been named in the squad of 23, with Jimmy Tumpus out for shoulder injury. And also, just to mention to Levi Proud, the SANFL Breakthrough Player of the Week, who got 28 disposals last week against the Crows, 6 marks, 6 tackles, 7 clearances. So we're going to go on to the other game now, Carlton and Collingwood from the Melbourne Cricket Ground. Any particular basic thoughts first of all?
It's a huge game, especially after last season. We took on Carlton in the 125-year celebrations and we actually went down. So the fact that they spoiled the party means we really need to bounce back, and it's really a crucial game tonight. If whichever side loses, they will be without a win so far, and no one wants that.
Yeah, it's certainly not a good feeling to lose your first few games. Kane Corns with some quite controversial comments earlier today, saying that if the Magpies lose this game, then Nathan Buckley could be in a bit of trouble with his coaching future. Any thoughts about that?
I think he's being a little dramatic. Bucks has just been given 2-year extension, so you can't really say 3 games in that his career at Collingwood's done. Just because we go zip 3. We've played the Giants, who are flag favourites. We've played Hawks, who are looking far better than last year. We put up a good fight, and I believe if we play like we did last week, we should get the 4 points.
Yes, that could be very possible, although I think the fact that people are already questioning Buckley can't be a good sign. So moving on to the teams, we've got Cruiser and Kennedy have been named in their team for Carlton. Burns and O'Shea have been omitted. Maybe still a little bit of doubt about Cruiser's fitness, but some good ins there for the Blues.
Definitely, and there's a bit of a shadow over Cruiser. If he doesn't play, Grundy will go to town. But yes, if he does, it's going to be a true battle of the Titans in the ruck.
And a couple of changes for Collingwood. Ben Reid and Mason Cox coming into the team. Darcy Moore and Tim Broomhead are out injured. Very serious injury there for Broomhead. But some decent ins as well for the Magpies.
Yeah, Ben Reid obviously brings with him a wealth of experience. He's a premiership player, as we all know, and he's struggled through injuries lately, but if he can just get a good run in the side, I feel he can contribute a lot more than he has been, and he's very good in.
Yeah, it's just got to try and find a way to kick some goals, the Magpies, and they might be up there again.
Definitely, and with the Mason Cox is also fairly big in. He provides a target up forward, especially with Moore out, done his hammy last week, and I think I'm not the biggest fan of Cox, but I think it's a pretty decent in for the current situation. So
do you have an overall tip for the game, or winner and margin?
I've gone the Pies. I can't go Carlton. That's out of the question. I've gone Pies by 17 points. It could go either way, but I'm feeling confident. And when that happens, we often lose, but I hope it doesn't go that way.
Yeah, well, I think the Blues haven't been too bad. Pretty good in the first game against the Tigers. Kind of got hit by a freight train a little bit last week by the Gold Coast Suns, who are in some very good form. But I think they might bounce back this week and win the game by a couple of goals. So moving on to the next game now, we'll be bringing you a more in-depth preview of this tomorrow, but Port Adelaide versus Brisbane Lions from the Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide naming an unchanged squad. A couple of changes, I think, for the Brisbane Lions, but Port Adelaide look to really go to town on Brisbane this week.
Yeah, definitely. I think Port will win this comfortably, and I think that's the general consensus amongst the footy community. Port Adelaide, I've been impressed by their recruiting in the off-season, but even more so by some of their youngsters stepping up, and I think it's just they're flag favourites, not
some
for no
good
reason.
ones in there.
Yeah.
Dougal Howard as well, Riley Bonner and Todd Marshall, the three who've been absolutely outstanding, the young kids for Port Adelaide. And the recruiting of Jack Watts has certainly helped out Marshall, I think. Jack Watts being quite quiet last week, but that leaves Marshall open to kick 3 goals. He's kicked 7 goals in 2 games, the boys, so it's definitely a good start for this young star.
Definitely. Brisbane, they really need players like Beams to step up. He's been a bit average, and I just feel like Port will run away with this in the second half. Also
exciting to see Tommy Rockcliffe going up against his old team for the first time. He's been a little bit quiet in his first 2 games, but a lot of potential there, and hopefully you see him really hit his stuff this week.
It's interesting to see him in this new role, and it should be good to see him against his old team and see what he can come up with.
So it should be Port Adelaide by, I think that hopefully within, I would almost feel like if we won the game by less than 30 points, it would be a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, that's a fair call, yeah.
So moving on to the next game, we've got Melbourne and North Melbourne from the MCG. North Melbourne actually pretty good last week against St Kilda in the second half once the got a bit darker and people could see what they were doing out in the field a little bit, but I don't know if I see them getting past Melbourne at the G.
I agree with you there, Jim. North Melbourne haven't been that bad, like we expected them to just bottom out this year. But they still probably won't make the 8, and they probably won't win this game.
No, I don't think so either. So Melbourne, maybe by about 5 or 6 goals, I reckon. So moving on to the next one, bit of a controversial one here with the Gold Coast Suns selling their home game to Fremantle to play it over at the Perth Stadium. I don't know how they feel about it, but I guess the Gold Coast Suns are laughing it up all the way to the bank anyway. They're in some good form here, a bit of a rough one for them having to travel 2 weeks in a row from Melbourne to Perth, and I understand they have to travel back to Perth again next week. But Fremantle, not too bad against Essendon winning that game, but I think I see the Suns maybe getting up in the away game here.
Yeah, I found this one of the hardest to tip this week. It was confusing with Gold Coast being at home in Perth.
Yes, it's very controversial, really.
So I believe I went with Gold Coast, but Freo realistically could win this one.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one, but going the Suns, maybe this away travel might just fire them up enough to want to prove a bit of a point as well. So Sydney Swans and the GWS Giants at the SCG. This was also a rather tough one, but GWS looking almost unstoppable early on, I think.
Yeah, well, having played them last week, I saw firsthand just the power in that midfield, Cornelio, Shield, etc. It sucks for them that they've lost Scully, but just the sheer power throughout their list. I think they'll knock off the Swans, actually. Yeah,
I've gone for GWS as well. Sydney looking alright early on, but also looking quite shaky at times against Port Adelaide, I thought. Although Buddy Franklin looking in career best form, I think.
Well, yeah, Buddy's just a joy to watch every week. Yeah, he's just that target up forward, isn't he?
Oh, just brilliant to watch. He's already gone past Wayne Carey, I think. Oh, he has on the goal-kicking list, but
that's a big call, but
to me, he's gone past Wayne Carey.
Yep.
Moving on to the next one. Bit of a who gives a rat's toss bag trophy in a way, but the St Kilda versus the Adelaide Crows.
Boo those fruit tingles.
St Kilda very average last week against North Melbourne, and they didn't get any better when the lights went down, so even when they could see what they were doing, they still had no idea what they were doing. And the Adelaide Crows certainly returning to form against the Tigers in the grand final replay last week.
Yeah, things definitely aren't looking good for St Kilda. I think the Crows will win this very comfortably.
Yes, me too. It's hard to see. I'm not sure what changes they ended up making in the end. We probably should have looked that up, but
Crows or Saints? I think Saints brought in Caulfield.
The young lad Fogarty was omitted for the Crows as well, which is a bit disappointing. Correct. He's one of the ones that I don't mind for them.
But they really needed to bring in Tom Lynch.
Yes, and actually a bit of controversy, some rumours about his contract today, that apparently they're still a fair way away from each other, the club and the player, Tom Lynch and the Adelaide Football Club.
Yeah, that was interesting to read too. I don't know why he wouldn't want to sign up, like they're a club in their premiership window, and yeah, it's just a surprise to me that they've come to a halt in the proceedings.
Well, that's the thing. Could we be seeing a Jake Lever situation 2.0 if Tom Lynch is being offered big money from an interstate club?
We very well could be.
The Adelaide Crows just would struggle to match the offer if it came down to the money, so
their player retention would just come up as another issue.
I don't know if it would be anything to do with that or not, but certainly from the financial point of view it would be a tough one for them. So moving on to the next game, Richmond versus Hawthorn from the MCG. This was a bit of a tough one as well. Hawthorn very strong last week, but Richmond, after losing to the Adelaide Crows, I think that they will bounce back and win this one.
I agree with you. I think Richmond still a league above Hawthorn. Hawks are looking better, but I had to go with Richmond.
Very good performance from the Hawks, but I just don't know if I see them backing it up again this week, or if they're certainly a little bit too reliant on Tom Mitchell, who's been absolutely fantastic early on. And surely, if he keeps that up, would almost have to be the favourite for the Brownlow medal, I think.
Do you think that Titch requires to be tagged?
Well, surely it's just common sense football, I think, that
Because Collingwood did.
just to leave him running. Yeah, obviously they tried to anyway, but doesn't seem like it was very successful.
And during the week, Jim and I also said that it's amazing that Mitchell has amassed 94 disposals in 2 games. That has to be a record.
Yeah, it's absolutely
AFL.
amazing stuff, and see how he goes this week as well. But on the next one, the Western Bulldogs against Essendon at the Docklands Stadium. Western Bulldogs, very poor start to this season. Very hard to believe that they are the same team that won the Premiership 18 months ago, and I guess in a lot of ways they're not that team anymore, but certainly a big disappointment to see them drop off so fast.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly some teams can fall. To be bottom just 2 years after their flag, like it's only 2 rounds in, but they're not looking good at all, are they?
No, certainly not. Like, we'd almost be hoping to see them bounce back somewhat, but based on their first 2 games, it's hard to see it. So, to me, I think Essendon could win this by a very comfortable margin this week.
Yes, I agree.
So maybe about 5 or 6 goals, I think, most likely the Bombers.
Yeah,
So,
I agree, yes.
going on to the last game of the round now from the Perth Stadium, the West Coast Eagles versus the Geelong Cats. Bit of a weekend of football over there in Perth, getting 2 games, but West Coast haven't been too bad in their first 2. Very good last week against the Bulldogs over there in Melbourne at the Docklands, but Geelong very good against Hawthorn this week, and starting out very strongly, even though they lost the game, but should be a very good one over there in Perth, and I think Geelong will win this one.
Yeah, I found this game to be the second hardest to tip.
It'll be a tough one. Also, maybe some rumours that Gary Ablett may not end up playing, but I suppose we'll find out a little bit closer to it.
Yeah, I've gone with West Coast due to the fact it's over there in Perth, but it's just too hard to call.
Wow, that's a strong one.
If Geelong show up, they could win quite easily.
Yes, I think so. West Coast also not too bad against the Swans, but in the first round. But Buddy Franklin christening the Perth Stadium. In fact, in my opinion, I wonder if they should almost name the stadium the Buddy Franklin Stadium after a performance like that. But I don't know if a lot of Perth fans would appreciate that. So we're going to move on to the AFL ladder now. GWS in first position. Port Adelaide second, Gold Coast Suns third, and Hawthorn fourth. They're the teams which have won both of their games so far. Any particular thoughts about the top 4 there?
The top 4, Giants and Port will remain in there throughout the season, but I can't see the Suns and Hawthorn sticking around.
Yeah, a bit of a
they've
tough
started
one.
well, but other teams will reel them in.
Yes, certainly. Then we've got the middle part of the table, bit of a logjam down there with North Melbourne, Adelaide Crows and the West Coast Eagles rounding out the top 8, and then the Sydney Swans in 9th, Geelong, Essendon, Richmond, St Kilda, and then Fremantle in 14th, all on 1 win each. I don't know if there's any particular thoughts about the logjam of the middle of the table, or if that's almost just about what was expected.
Yeah, well, it's hard to see the Crows losing many more like they did against Essendon.
Yes, and certainly as they get more players coming back into their team as well.
And teams like Sydney and Geelong, they'll obviously push for the 8. Richmond in 12th is a bit of a surprise, but that's what happens early in the year.
Yeah, a bit of a close one, and losing that game against the Adelaide Crows in a close one is a tough one as well.
Yeah.
So then going into the bottom 4, the Brisbane Lions, Collingwood down there, a little bit of a rough one for you, mate, but then Carlton in 17th, and the Western Bulldogs very strongly in 18th with a disgusting percentage of 47.6%.
That is a very low percentage.
I don't know if there's any particular thoughts about the bottom 4 there, or any surprises, or...
Well, I love seeing Carlton down there.
Disappointment. So yeah, Collingwood and Carlton 16th and 17th respectively in Friday Night Football tonight.
There's a lot of improvement to come from both sides, and I feel I feel like they'll rise up the ladder, but not make the 8.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this preview today. We'll be back with you on Howlin Sports later on tonight to give you some updates from Glenelg Oval. Thank you very much, Ben, for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
And we're going to leave you with this. We'll see you later on. What the hell's going on here? This isn't the... Have you been fiddling with this?
No.
Obviously not the right song here. There we go. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Honour the magpies day and by night. Lift that loyal banner high. Shake out the thunder from the sky. Whether the odds be great or be small, we'll come out and win overall. While our players keep on fighting onward to victory. Cheer, cheer the black and the white. Honour the magpies day and by night. Lift that loyal banner high. Shake down the thunder from the sky. Whether the odds be great or be small, we'll come out and win overall. While our players keep on fighting onward to victory. Cheer, cheer the black and the white. Honour the magpies day and by night. Lift that loyal banner high. Shake down the thunder from the sky. Whether the odds be great or be small, we'll come out and win overall. While our players keep on fighting onward to victory.